Lucian is dead. According.
Powerful villains do not start as monsters. They are shaped into them, forged by fear, sharpened by loss, crowned by their own certainty that the world must bend to their will or collapse beneath them. In the world of Underworld, no figure embodies this truth more completely than Viktor, the Elder, the warlord, the father figure who raised an army of immortals and ruled them through terror disguised as order. Viktor is one of the most cold and formidable rulers ever created in a supernatural film, but beneath his ruthless exterior lies something far more unsettling. A man who fears weakness more than he fears death. A leader who hides guilt behind centuries of discipline. A tyrant whose greatest cruelty comes not from hatred but from the dread of losing control. Viktor is both the architect and the prison of the vampire world. He becomes myth through authority, legend through violence, and tragic figure through the lies he builds to keep himself safe.
Consider yourself lucky. Most humans die within an hour of being bitten by an immortal.
His story stretches across the Underworld saga, from the ancient war against the Lycans to the birth of Selene's lineage. Behind his every decision lies a philosophy shaped by the trauma of mortality and the intoxicating promise of immortality. Viktor has outlived kings, governments, and entire civilizations. Yet despite all his victories, one truth defines him. He fears the loss of power the way others fear the loss of life. Today we dive deep into the shadowed world of this immortal tyrant. This is Viktor Explained, a man who built a kingdom on blood, loyalty, and fear. A man who manipulated an entire species to preserve his throne. A man whose downfall reveals the cost of a god trying to control the world he created. Let us begin the descent into Viktor's long, bitter story.
What you will do is summon Marcus.
Every tyrant begins as someone who feels powerless. Before Viktor became an elder, before he commanded armies, before his voice echoed through centuries, he was simply a mortal man. The film suggests he was once a dying warlord, ravaged by age and disease, clinging to life with the desperation of someone who believes the world will collapse without his leadership. Even in these early moments, Viktor's identity was rooted in fear. Fear of weakness, fear of losing relevance, fear of becoming nothing. When Marcus approached him with the promise of immortality, Viktor seized it with the hunger of someone who valued control above all else. But Viktor's immortality was not a gift of nobility. It was an escape from death, an escape from vulnerability. It is this origin that shapes his entire personality. For Viktor, immortality becomes a fortress, a place where he can bury the fragility he once felt, a place where he can pretend he was never powerless. From the moment Viktor becomes an elder, his world is defined by strict hierarchy. He builds a society not on community, but on obedience. He creates order to silence the chaos within himself. Even his physical presence reflects this. He sits on a throne carved in cold stone, surrounded by guards, speaking with the tone of a man who expects the world to bend before he finishes the sentence. The film reveals quiet Easter eggs about his personality. The way he glances at the other elders shows tension disguised as respect. The way he grips his sword reflects more than strength. It reflects fear of letting go. His waking ritual, where vampires gather to honor him, is less tradition and more reassurance. Viktor needs worship. He needs loyalty. He needs to believe he is the pillar that holds the entire vampire world upright. And yet, beneath all this power lies a wound he refuses to acknowledge. His daughter, Sonia. She represents the only part of his life where love and authority collided. She embodies everything he fears: compassion, rebellion, vulnerability. Her love for Lucian threatens the rigid order Viktor spent centuries creating. In her, he sees not only disobedience, but a reflection of his own mortality. Because love makes a god fragile, and Viktor cannot allow fragility to exist within himself. When Viktor destroys Sonia, he believes he is saving his empire, but in reality, he is destroying the last piece of his humanity. This moment is his emotional turning point. The films do not always linger on his expression, but in the quiet seconds after Sonia is gone, his face betrays something raw. Not sorrow, not guilt, something more dangerous. the realization that he has crossed a line he can never return from. Viktor does not start as a monster. He becomes one because he cannot face his own heart. Every tyrant is created by the things they refuse to feel. Viktor's immortality only gives him centuries to avoid that truth. Power means survival to Viktor. It is not a burden, it is not a responsibility. It is a shield against the fear he once felt as a mortal. His philosophy is simple: control or be destroyed, dominate or be forgotten. This worldview shapes every law, every punishment, every quiet decree he gives from the shadows of his throne. Viktor rules with precision, discipline, and absolute certainty. Doubt has no place in his reign. To understand Viktor is to understand how he defines order. Vampires are superior because they are disciplined. Primordial hunger becomes refined when placed under authority. Immortality becomes sustainable only through structure. In Viktor's mind, chaos is the greatest threat to their survival, and anything that disrupts that order must be eliminated, no matter how cruel the cost. The Lycans represent the chaos he fears, their strength, their passion, their refusal to be controlled. He sees them as a threat not because they are enemies, but because they remind him of his own uncontrolled origins. Viktor cannot bear to see a reflection of his vulnerability in another species, so he rewrites the narrative. Lycans become animals, servants, creatures unworthy of freedom. This justification allows him to commit unspeakable acts with a clear conscience. One of the most revealing details comes from the way he manipulates the death of Sonia and the uprising of Lucian. He knows that if he admits the truth, his power will fracture. He knows that if the vampires see him as a father who killed his own daughter, they will question everything. So Viktor crafts a legend. He paints Lucian as the monster. He hides the truth behind a veil of loyalty and duty. He raises Selene on a throne of lies, knowing she will defend him if she never learns the truth. Viktor's entire identity is built upon this philosophy. Never reveal weakness. Never admit guilt. Never allow truth to undermine authority. To him, vulnerability is the first step toward downfall, and so he hardens himself until nothing gentle remains. Even the way Viktor speaks reinforces this philosophy. His voice is low, measured, and barely raised. He does not shout because shouting would imply emotion. Emotion implies weakness. When he commands, he does so with the weight of centuries behind him. His words are weapons. His silence is judgment. His presence is an unspoken threat. But every rigid philosophy cracks eventually. Viktor begins to crumble the moment Selene discovers the truth. The lies he stacked like pillars begin to tremble, and the empire he built on fear starts to tilt toward destruction. Selene is Viktor's greatest creation and his greatest deception. He finds her after the slaughter of her family and presents himself as a savior, a father figure, a mentor. He raises her within the walls of the coven, teaching her discipline, loyalty, and obedience. But every lesson is built on a lie. Selene sees him as a protector. Viktor sees her as a tool, a weapon forged from loyalty and love. He molds her with care, not out of affection, but because she is valuable. Her hatred of Lycans makes her the perfect enforcer. Her respect for Viktor makes her the perfect shield. She becomes the living embodiment of his philosophy. She believes order comes before emotion. She believes loyalty is strength. She believes Viktor is the cornerstone of their world. This is what makes his manipulation so tragic. Viktor does not simply control Selene. He manipulates her into believing he is the moral center of her existence. He shapes her worldview. He shapes her identity. He shapes her future. And he does it with the cold precision of a man who understands how to use affection as a chain. There is a subtle sorrow in how Viktor looks at Selene during certain scenes. A flicker of protectiveness, a hint of pride. He does care for her, but his care is conditional. It is shaped by his desire to keep her loyal. It is shaped by self-preservation. The tragedy is that Selene loves Viktor like a father, while Viktor loves Selene like an asset. The films reveal the emotional impact of this manipulation through small details. The way she kneels before him out of respect. The way he places a hand on her shoulder with calculated gentleness. The way she reacts to his disappointment with visible pain. These moments are not about power alone. They're about betrayal disguised as love. When Selene learns the truth about her family, the entire foundation of her identity collapses. Viktor destroyed the people she loved. He took her childhood. He weaponized her grief. And he did all of this while pretending to be her protector. This is the moment Viktor's mask cracks. For the first time, he shows something real: fear. Fear not of Selene, but of the truth she represents. She becomes the reflection he tried to avoid, the embodiment of his greatest lie. And in that moment, the empire he built for centuries crumbles beneath the weight of honesty. Selene becomes the consequence of his choices, and Viktor becomes the tragic father figure whose downfall comes not from enemies, but from the daughter he deceived. Viktor's downfall does not arrive suddenly. It gathers like a storm. Quiet at first, a whisper of doubt, a crack in the marble of his authority, a tremor in the loyalty he once commanded. For centuries, he has moved through the vampire world like a living monument, unquestioned and unchallenged. But monuments always crumble the same way, from within. The rise of Selene and the awakening of truths he spent centuries burying become the unraveling threads of his empire. When Viktor learns that she has uncovered fragments of her past, there is a rare flicker in his expression. Not anger, not surprise, something far more revealing: fear. He's built his kingdom on a single principle: the ones who know the truth must never live to speak it. Yet here is Selene, a creation of his lies, carrying the truth in her hands like a weapon. He sees the collapse of his legacy before a single blow is exchanged. He sees the memories he stole from her. He sees the innocence he destroyed. He sees the daughter he lost reflected in the woman he raised. Selene carries a piece of Sonia in her defiance. She carries a piece of the rebellion Viktor tried to erase. This is why her betrayal cuts deeper than Lucian's uprising ever could. This is not the fall of a soldier. This is the fall of a father figure who tried to silence the echoes of his past. When the final confrontation unfolds, Viktor enters the scene with the slow, deliberate grace of someone who still believes the world belongs to him. His armor gleams with the weight of centuries. His sword reflects a lifetime of victories. The chamber shakes under the command of his voice. Yet none of this power reaches Selene. She has stepped beyond fear, and Viktor senses this before the battle even begins. Their fight is not two warriors clashing. It's a lifetime of unresolved emotion breaking through the surface. Viktor fights with the precision of an elder. Every moment is controlled. Every strike is calculated. He attacks with the confidence of someone who has never known defeat. But Selene answers with something Viktor cannot anticipate. She fights with clarity. She fights with truth. She fights with the fury of someone who has finally understood the deception that shaped her entire existence. As their blades meet, the past unfolds around them like a shattered prophecy. Viktor sees flashes of Sonia in Selene's face. He sees Lucian's rebellion rising in her stance. He sees every secret he buried rising to confront him. This is not simply a physical battle. It is his legacy collapsing in real time. For the first time in centuries, Viktor's voice trembles. He tries to command her, not as a leader, but as a father desperate to maintain control. His words attempt to bind her the way they always have, but Selene's silence cuts through him more deeply than any weapon. She is no longer the child he molded. She is the truth he tried to bury. The choreography of their fight reveals Viktor's unraveling. He begins with poise, then aggression, then desperation. His strikes grow wild. His stance falters. His certainty cracks. He's not losing because he's weak. He's losing because he is facing someone he spent a lifetime underestimating. Every blow Selene delivers carries emotional weight. You lied to me. You stole my family. You built my life from ashes of a truth you destroyed. And Viktor receives these blows not as a warrior, but as a man realizing the cost of his choices. There's a moment when Viktor pauses, blade lowered, breathing heavy. He sees Selene not as a threat, but as the consequence he has avoided for too long. This is the true horror for him, not the loss of his life, but the loss of his myth. Because Viktor has always believed he was more than a man, more than an elder, more than a king. He believed he was the foundation of their world, a god made immortal by necessity. Selene shatters that illusion with a single decision. She raises her blade, and Viktor understands that the age he created is ending. His final moments are a study in tragic acceptance. His eyes widen not with shock, but with realization. He dies knowing the truth he feared most. He was never a god. He was only a man who built his throne from lies and carved his legacy from the suffering of others. A man who feared the truth more than he feared death. A man whose downfall was inevitable the moment he chose power over compassion. Selene does not celebrate his end. Her silence is grief wrapped in justice. She has slain the man who shaped her life, but she has also slain the illusion that held her prisoner. She became free at the exact moment Viktor fell. Viktor's body hits the ground with a weight that feels symbolic. The empire he built falls with him. The centuries he ruled fade like dust. The lies he crafted collapse under their own gravity. His death is not the end of a villain. It is the end of an era built on fear. And in that haunting moment, Viktor becomes something more than a tyrant. He becomes a cautionary tale, a reminder that even immortals cannot escape the truth, a reminder that power is a poor substitute for love, a reminder that the greatest monsters are not born, they are made by the choices they refuse to face. Viktor is not simply a villain. He's a portrait of what happens when fear becomes a throne, when control becomes a substitute for love, when lies become the foundation of a kingdom. His story stretches across centuries, but its lesson is timeless. Those who rule through fear die in fear. Those who bury their guilt drown in it, and those who refuse to face the truth are destroyed by it. In the end, Viktor's tragedy is not that he was powerful. It's that he believed power was all he had. He believed order could replace compassion. He believed immortality could silence regret. He believed loyalty could be forced rather than earned. And he believed the truth could be buried forever. But truth always rises. Always. It rose in Lucian. It rose in Sonia. And it rose most powerfully in Selene, the one person he never intended to turn into his judge. Thank you for watching Strange Flick Facts, where we explore the hidden truth inside the characters you cannot stop thinking about. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please like and subscribe for more stories from the shadows of cinema.